Welcome, fellow explorers. My name is Christian Alexandersen, and this is Hemlocks to Hellbenders, a podcast highlighting Pennsylvania's parks, forests, and great outdoors. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Leonard Harrison State Park. Leonard Harrison is one of the crown jewels of Pennsylvania's state park system. It provides visitors with stunning views of the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon, one of our most beautiful natural features. Leonard Harrison is the park I brag about. It's the one I show off to friends and family members when they visit. But before we get into the interview, here's the stats. Leonard Harrison is a 585-acre park located in Tioga County. Available activities include hiking, picnicking, camping, wildlife watching, hunting, and fishing. A notable feature of the park is its breathtaking views of the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon. Leonard Harrison State Park is named after local civic-minded businessman Leonard Harrison. The park originally consisted of 121 acres and was called the Lookout. Harrison owned and developed the area as a public picnic ground. He gave the area to the Commonwealth in 1922. Additional lands were added to the park in the late 1940s. Nearby towns include Wellsboro, Ansonia, and Gailton. State parks that are close by include Colton Point, Hills Creek, Lyman Run, Patterson, Prouty Place, and Cherry Springs. You may enjoy this park if you enjoy breathtaking views. I'm excited to welcome Tim Morey to the podcast. Tim is a Natural Resources Program Specialist with the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Thanks for speaking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
What does a Natural Resources Program Specialist do?
I do a number of things. I oversee the educational outreach at the park, as well as the volunteer program, and also consult on a number of recreations at a number of state parks.
How long have you been at Leonard Harrison?
I've worked at Leonard Harrison actually over 20 seasons now.
How would you describe the park to someone who's never been there before?
The park is better known as the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon. What I would say to someone who hasn't been to the park is it's a narrow forested gorge that was created by retreating glaciers. That is, if they're getting into the geology of the park a little bit more. It offers a window to the past and really of Penn's Woods and of the wilderness and a natural landscape that's hard to see in this part of the country.
What's something that stands out about the park to you? What do you love most about it?
The park really offers something for everyone. It has a visitor center and overlooks. If you're looking for something a little bit more industrious, we have hiking trails and biking trails for different ability levels. Certainly the most notable would be the turkey path that descends the whole way to the bottom of the gorge. We have the scenic river at the bottom, Pine Creek. It's great for rafting, canoeing, and kayaking, also for fishing as well. We also have lots of open space, wildlife watching, thousands of acres for hunting, just enjoying the outdoors.
I've been to Leonard Harrison and its sister park across the gorge, Colton Point, a number of times. What always strikes me is the amount of activities, the diversity of things that you can do there. Is there something you think everyone should do if they come on a visit to the park?
The first thing that visitors should do is experience the overlooks at Leonard Harrison. It's one of the most dramatic overlooks anywhere in the state, anywhere in the region. Beyond that, though, you need a little more time to stretch your legs. So I always recommend, if people are up for a good hike, is to go down the turkey path, and they need to be prepared for that. But it's 1 mile each way, 1 mile down, 1 mile back. It's 800 vertical feet. A lot of people say it feels like 1 mile down and 2 miles back, but it is just the same. But 800 vertical feet, it's quite a climb, but it offers several waterfalls, and you get to experience the canyon in a different way and see it from both the top and the bottom.
So a visitor is going to stop by the park. They have a full day to explore. What do you think they should do?
The turkey path is always a great place to go. Again, if visitors have the time and have the energy, if you will, and are prepared to make that hike, it is something they can always do. I would also like to add, something for a full day would be to look at biking on the Pine Creek Trail. It's a 62-mile rails to trails in the bottom of the canyon. We're only about 3.5 miles in from the nearest access point to straight right below the overlooks. So visitors would come in, ride that rails to trails on a bicycle, hike. They may even hike off the rail trail, come up a short distance to our waterfalls or one of several other side trails off that. Another thing that's very popular and I highly recommend, and especially for those not so much into hiking or biking, which is just fine, is to explore our sister park, Colton Point. It's a beautiful CCC era, 1930s structures, lots of beautiful old pavilions and fireplaces. That's located on the west rim, Colton Point State Park.
Say a visitor is stopping by, they're passing through Wellsboro maybe, and they only have a couple hours to see the park, see what's kind of the best aspects of it. What do you think they're going to stop by first? Do you think it's going to be the views?
I do. If for a short visit, the views are just it. Some of our visitors only stay about 15 or 20 minutes, and that may be for different reasons. Perhaps they have some other plans to make in the area. If you have just a little bit more time, though, I'd recommend our Overlook Trail. It's a shorter trail that we offer. It still has some elevation change to it, so it's not a flat trail. And this is the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon, so things are up, things are down. It has a little bit of that, but it's a shorter hike, about 45 minutes, and offers a remote vista looking south over Pine Creek. And it's called Otter View, and that is named after was one of the first release points of river otter in Pennsylvania.
Now, I'm sure as somebody who's spent so much time at the park, so many seasons at the park, you would say the park is great any season. But is there a best season that you think people should stop by and really take in those views and maybe experience what everything Leonard Harrison has to offer?
I agree. I think the park is wonderful in all seasons, and it's great to see it change through the seasons for those that are able to come back. If you had to pick one time, I would say it's best in late September. Early October tends to be our peak as far as fall foliage is concerned, and that is our busiest time at the park. And because of that, I recommend a little bit before that, come see the early fall color, late September, and, and that ends up being kind of the best of both worlds. Instead of coming on one of the busier days when it'd be a much different experience than to come see a wilderness park. When it's super busy there, it's a different experience. The second best time I would suggest, and if the fall isn't up for you, would be to come in mid-June for the Laurel Festival. It's a Pennsylvania State Laurel Festival, and it highlights our state flower, and we have that in full bloom typically mid-June to late June, and you can enjoy the festival that's happening nearby and enjoy hiking trails and just the beauty of the early summer here in the gorge.
The fall colors are absolutely phenomenal. I think I've been to Land Harrison and Colton Point in the fall 3 or 4 times now, and it is just stunning. I would argue they're the best views in Pennsylvania. They are something to really behold and take in. I've also been in there in the heat in the summer, hiking that turkey path. So I can tell you it's enjoyable no matter what time of the year you show up.
And a different experience, all
Yes,
different times of year that you come and experience the park.
like a lot of parks in Pennsylvania, Leonard Harrison has been impacted by mass deforestation that occurred in the past. How has the park rebounded, and what kind of trees will visitors encounter when they stop by?
Through a number of conservation efforts from the years of the early 1900s, Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s, and years after that, forests have returned. There's lots of hardwoods, northern hardwoods, specifically beech, birch, and maple, as well as we're right on the edge of the mixed oak forest. Mostly here you're seeing white oaks and red oaks. Of course, I'd be remiss not to mention the hemlock hollows, the eastern hemlock, state tree, and we still have quite a number of hemlocks that are visible, and certainly the hollows, the microclimates that come with that, especially in a hot summer day to go in a hemlock hollow and see a brook trout stream there, and that cool water and the cool forest that surrounds it. It's an unparalleled experience. We also have the white pine, which is what the stream that winds through the bottom of the gorge is named after, Pine Creek, and the white pine trees are still part of the canyon landscape. And as you look across the canyon, you'll see the white pines typically sticking up a little bit higher along the ridges.
I think one of the big gaps in my outdoor knowledge is tree identification. It always seems easy when somebody says, "Well, of course, that's an oak. We all know that." And I go, I do not know that. And then they go, "Oh, this is a birch, clearly because of this." If everyone spent a little time, including myself, I think it's something that you can pick up when you spend enough time in the Pennsylvania outdoors.
It is. It's something that some people may take for granted, really that. And I know that growing up in the area and spending time in the woods with family and just being out there, you end up picking up some of these things bit by bit. And then trying to pass them along to your family members. And that's really a huge part of what I love about my job, is being able to share my love, my knowledge of nature with visitors to the park. And whether it be a family visiting in the summertime, or school groups that come here other times of the year.
When speaking about reforestation efforts, you spoke about the Civilian Conservation Corps. What sort of work, what was the amount of work they did to make the park what it is right now?
The Civilian Conservation Corps, aka the CCC, I mean, they're just known as the CCC, or the CCC boys, because they were all an average age of 18 to 19 years old, young men. 1930s Great Depression era program, looking for work, most of the money being sent home. They had such a large role in the surveying, planning, and managing of the early forest here. Um, that made such a big difference, and a difference that we're still seeing today. It's really that legacy lives on in what they did. They also, I have to mention too, they helped that new forest regenerate because they helped build roads and trails and fight fires. So those roads and trails many times were actually put in to help access areas where there would be wildfires that they'd need to go fight. And those roads and trails we are still using today, and countless visitors have enjoyed since then.
You spoke a little bit about the Turkey Path. It's a hike I was unsure about because there's big signs at the front that says take this trail seriously. There's some serious incline coming back up. What are people going to see if they decide to hike that trail?
The highlight of the trail for me, it's two things really, would be the waterfalls along the way, and they're most of the way towards the bottom of the trail. Just in case folks are thinking about hiking only part of it, they are closer to the bottom than the top. And then the other piece would be Pine Creek, and being able to get to the bottom of the canyon to be able to experience Pine Creek from there and look back up at the overlooks that you just came down from. There's some old growth forest. There's some beautiful old growth sugar maples, some huge hemlocks down in the hollow, lots of wildflowers, native wildflowers and plants, wildlife. And I'd be remiss not to mention that the canyon is a beautiful geologic feature. This is one of these significant features that we have all over Pennsylvania. In the canyon has a lot of features there to enjoy, and there's fossil rocks along the bottom, for instance, that the kids love exploring and seeing the fossils, the brachiopods, and the bottom of Pine Creek there. One other point I'd like to make about Turkey Path is it is while it's a beautiful and amazing hike, it is a difficult trail. It's not necessarily dangerous itself, but we do end up with a number of visitors that have injuries along that trail. And as you mentioned, there's signs to say danger and warning and be careful. It's really, and from my years of experience at the park, what I found is that if visitors stay on the trail, they're staying safe. If once you venture off the trail, there's many things that can cause some issues with your trip, and to make it a less than fun experience. So I ask folks to avoid the temptation of walking in and near the stream, especially near the waterfalls. It's just not worth the risk. They're a beautiful thing. They're best viewed from a distance, and we offer some great vistas and views and vantage points from the trails around those waterfalls.
And as somebody who's actually hiked that path before, I'd have to say everything is graded, I think, really appropriately for people of different abilities. If you want to take it a little slower, if you want to kind of rest, if you want to seat, if you want to walk it slow, you can walk it slow. If for some reason you want to hike this really fast, you can do that. In addition to staying on the path, it being safer, it's also better for the environment.
We do have a number of very sensitive plants that try to grow on the unstable slopes of the canyon. They have a very hard time growing there even before a human walks through and tramples them. So yes, besides personal safety, the impacts to the environment are significant by going off the trail. It increases erosion, so it even impacts the stream life from the erosion that would be coming off the steep-sided hills.
Let's go from hiking and trees and plants to animals. Following years of overhunting and trapping in the 1800s, wildlife populations declined greatly. But thanks to conservation efforts, animals like deer, elk, beaver, and more flourish. What sort of animals can visitors spot if they come to the park?
There's no limit to what you can see. It's just what you're going to see depending on how long you can stay. So your big three, your bear, turkey, and deer, are all here at the park. Deer would be the most popular to see, but I've seen a bear walk right across the overlooks kind of behind a crowd of people. It wasn't worried about the people, and they never saw the bear. So uh, wildlife really finds a way to exist, and certainly you're coming to what some might call the big woods country. I mean, this is north central Pennsylvania, and there is a great amount of land here and acreage and habitat for these animals to live in. So you're going to see more of that if you're quiet and take the time to let that wildlife come out and show itself. Those that are fortunate enough to do that, a lot of times I talk to folks about fishing on Pine Creek. They'll have a river otter swim right by them, and not really have a whole lot of concern about them. There's a fisher that have been reintroduced to the area a number of years ago now. Their actually population is doing wonderfully well in the area. They're very hard to see, but you can see those even here. Lots of bird life. It's so diverse, everything from bald eagles, osprey, turkey vultures, which you can see soaring along the canyon. Woodpeckers throughout because of the different forest types that we have. We have many different types of woodpeckers and relatives. Hawks, songbirds, and just, again, a ton of bird life. One of the reptiles and amphibians that we have that's most famous would be, I think famous might be the right word, would be rattlesnake. I would not use infamous, but yeah, the rattlesnake really invokes a lot of different feelings in visitors. And I like to think back to, it was one of the early symbols of this country. Don't tread on me, and the Union Jack flag. Really, it's all about, to me today as well, respect for that snake, and they can coexist there with us. When we're going out into the woods here, into the nature at the canyon, you're going into their home, their backyard, and that's really they have quite a stronghold in the area. They have a healthy population. We want to keep it that way. So your home is one thing, and that's where you live. This is where they live. They have a very important job here to control, keep populations in check of rodents, and they do a great job of doing that. And if folks stay on the trails and respect the rattlesnakes, if they do happen to see one, we can coexist quite peacefully with them.
Yeah, it doesn't take more than a couple minutes on Instagram to find people who decide all these creatures, a bear, deer, they're just furry enjoyment for us. We can go over, we can pet them. Oh, they're just like what we see on TV. And anyone who spent any time in the outdoors, or especially has taken some courses to make sure what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do around animals, give them their space. Like you said, we're in their house, they're not in ours.
Today's talking here, I didn't want to get too far into it, but if visitors are interested, we go a lot further into the biology of the rattlesnake and how they work. They're really, folks learn a little bit more about them instead of fearing them. Because they're really an amazing animal. The job that they do, and the part of the services they provide the environment here, they're part of the ecosystem. It's really quite amazing what they do.
And speaking of things that you can learn, there's an environmental education center at the park, which is right near the views. So you're going to have to walk right by it just to be able to get to those views. What sort of things can visitors learn when they visit there?
The education center here at the park offers an insight to the past, steps all the way back to the geologic process that created the canyon, and more specifically, the glacial process, the glacial meltwater, the glacial carving of the canyon. And then it goes into how the forest has changed over time, from the virgin, untouched forest to the Pennsylvania desert, and the mass destruction and the deforestation that occurred in north central Pennsylvania, one of the worst places it ever was seen. And it really led to the conservation effort that we're still in, that conservation effort and reforestation that's going on still today. And the canyon has really rebounded from that. And the rest of the exhibit tree highlights the different wildlife that you can see, the different habitats of the canyon, as well as modern conservation efforts such as the Civilian Conservation Corps and their efforts in the 1930s. We offer not only the center for families and visitors to go through when they come, but we also do host a number of school groups that engage in the different environmental and cultural topics here in the canyon as well.
We spoke a little bit earlier about Pine Creek Trail, everything it has to offer. I know when I went to the park to kind of celebrate the end of my runs that I was doing in every park, we took a wagon tour that was just incredible. But you could sign up for a tour, you could do it yourself on a bike, you could take some walks. What can people do on that trail?
So yeah, you mentioned biking, hiking, wagon rides. I think it's a great place to access the canyon. Instead of hiking down the turkey path, you can ride a bike, hike up a short distance to the waterfall, do a number of different ways to get into side hikes. The waterfalls of the canyon are very popular. Bicycling or hiking along the trail, you can access a number of fishing spots that are a little harder to get to if you don't use that trail. So that's always a good thing. And there's also camping that's provided along that trail. So you may, if you're set up to do so, use a trailer, a tow behind or otherwise, and actually camp with your bicycle on the Pine Creek Trail. Some beautiful sights there along the stream. The winter is also a tremendous time to see the Pine Creek Trail in the canyon. Talk about a quiet wilderness experience to go skiing down the rails to trails and experience the canyon. There's also snowshoeing that's popular at that time. Any time of year, though, wildlife watching, photography, the landscapes, the cliffs high above, and the landscapes that are here, the fog lifting out of the valley. It's really an inspiring landscape.
Now, for those who may not be camping in the park or maybe camping nearby, they're going to maybe find an Airbnb or a hotel in Wellsboro. I spent a lot of time in Wellsboro. I've spent a lot of money at the little shops and restaurants in Wellsboro. What is there to do there? What do you think people should check out if they come for a visit?
Yeah, Wellsboro's always been tied to the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon, and Leonard Harrison, a local businessman, actually was one of the first folks to ever promote the park. And the Chamber of Commerce has always been tied in really with the park. So ecotourism before ecotourism was a word, and it was going on. So you'll still find that spirit in Wellsboro, and thus that hospitality and really the tourism industry is going well. So you'd have everything from, you can get a wagon ride in the canyon, of course, different bicycle and cross-country ski rentals that you can employ uh, just to see. Wellsboro is such a cool little town. That's what we hear from visitors a lot of times. It's a walkable community, so it's the old-fashioned small town feel, still in a modern day. So it's kind of like stepping back in time.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of my favorite small towns. As someone who's lucky enough to spend a lot of time in these small towns, you kind of fall in love with their charm and, like you said, their walkability and just seeing like, oh, it's a local pharmacy. Oh, this is a really cool comic book shop. Just really interesting features you don't get to see in a lot of big cities. Wellsboro is a top 5 place in Pennsylvania, in my opinion.
And it's something that perhaps part of the family is interested in, more of the town life and the shopping and maybe antiquing or otherwise, or supporting small business, because there are a lot of unique uh, mom and pop owned shops, and they're really cool in their own right. There's that, but then there's also, you have the town, but you have then the environment surrounding the town. So I would recommend that folks certainly come for the canyon, come for Leonard Harrison. It's the primary place to see the canyon, but then most folks want to come back. So you're looking for more. What more is there? There's so much more. You just start heading down that road. If you're looking for other hiking trails, pick up a couple other maps, stop into one of the park offices and ask about other trails, other things. They'll ask you what you liked, what you've done already. They'll point you in a couple new directions. There's just thousands and thousands of miles of hiking and biking and equestrian trails. It's just so much to do. And besides it, we haven't really talked a whole lot about the rafting, canoeing, kayaking, Pine Creek fishing. I mean, there's just so much to do in the area, just enjoying nature and being out in some of the largest uh, publicly owned lands in this part of the country, part of the Pennsylvania wilds. It's a very accessible part of the Pennsylvania wilds as well. It's what draws a lot of people, I think, to this eastern part of the region.
Do you have any tips for people who are planning on visiting the park?
I I do actually, and I'm kind of laughing a little bit with this because it's so important. It's going to seem a little bit silly in today's age, But the first thing that folks will do is they'll plug in the address of the park. They'll plug in Leonard Harrison, and they'll start following that phone or that GPS, and that'll work for a while. But once you get close, it does not work well. So please, so my number one tip, believe it or not, is to plug in a local town like Wellsboro, navigate to that, and then the old-fashioned method of you take Route 660 west, it ends at the park. So it's as simple as that. In that way, it keeps you off the back roads, and especially if folks are hauling a camper behind them or driving a motorhome, we don't like to hear that they follow their GPS and they went up some back road that they shouldn't be on. And if you're coming in the off season when the roads are a little slipperier, that's certainly not what you want to do either. Not for saving 5 minutes if things go well. So use the GPS to get to the towns, and then use the road maps to come out. And road maps, old-fashioned road maps, printed maps, are actually really useful in the region because cell phone coverage is spotty. So if you're worried about directions, yeah, have that good old-fashioned map. A number of our public agency offices still offer them in print version, so they can pick those up, or they can grab a map any which other way they'd like, or download something on their phone if they can do so. Another tip I'd recommend would be related to hiking. I've mentioned the Turkey Path is a serious trail. If people are careful, stay on the path, it certainly can be safe. I'd recommend if you're going hiking in the area to bring wear proper footwear, dress for the weather, and in layers. Always take water, snacks, first aid kit, and be prepared. And part of that would be a map and knowing how to read it, and not just an app on a phone that sometimes won't work as well as you need them, or the batteries will die. I should note as well, seasonally, some of the trails in the area are closed. The Turkey Path at Leonard Harrison and Colton Point and our other trails are closed roughly November to April. That's based on the weather. It's based on ice forming on the trails and a number of wooden structures that prevent us from keeping those open in the wintertime. The cleats would damage those trail structures, and thus we end up closing those trails to be able to keep them open the rest of the year. And in the wintertime, Colton Point is a great place to go on snowmobile. But because of that, the road is not maintained, not plowed, and thus gets packed in by snowmobiles. And thus, you do not want to try to drive your vehicle up to Colton Point, and even well into what you might think would be the spring. We've had people get stuck on the way to Colton Point in April because there's still a foot of snow on top of the hill.
Oh, wow.
And that's no one has fun when that happens. So just remember that you're coming to a place that it's rural Pennsylvania. That's one of the reasons probably why most folks are coming here. But with that comes, you have less cell phone connectivity, and also need to realize you need to be a little bit more prepared than you might be on your day-to-day routine to make sure that you have a full tank of gas, a map. Don't get yourself stuck somewhere in the middle of nowhere with no way to get out because your cell phone won't work. That being said, I don't want to concern people. Again, that's why you come here, for these remote areas. I want people to be safe and enjoy the area that they're coming to. One more, I have a few others here if you have time for them.
Please.
So if you're coming to bicycle the Pine Creek Trail, a number of people show up at the park and say, I'm here to bicycle, and we have to redirect them. So just realize that if you're coming to bicycle, the rail trail is in the park, but it's at the bottom of the canyon. So when you come into bicycle, you'll actually want to put in the access area for the rail trails. One of those access areas, there's several, closest being only 3.5 miles away from right below the overlooks, but they need to go there, not to the park area. That'll save them some time. Of course, if you're here, you come enjoy the overlooks and there's worse places to be for sure, but just realize the biking is in the bottom of the canyon. For those looking for that perfect image, enjoying a sunrise at Colton Point as you're looking east across the canyon, or enjoying a sunset at Leonard Harrison looking west, those would be my recommendations for photography. In the fall, the leaves are great. Before 10 o'clock, lots of fog. So that could be what you're looking to capture with your image, but realize the fog in the fall is really an interesting player as far as the landscape photography is concerned in the canyon. And as far as it really changes the experience. It's really an amazing thing when the fog lifts out of the canyon after being completely fogged in the morning sometimes. And the last thing I'd like to mention is about fall color. There's actually two peaks. So there's a local / regional county forecast that typically comes out. And that peak for the park is typically around early October. And that's the first peak that the park has. The park actually has a second peak because we have a number of oaks that are in the canyon. So that's usually a week or maybe even more later. So mid to late October, we typically get a second peak. So that means it really extends a different time. Early October is the peak, and Columbus Day weekend is the busiest weekend to come. But the leaves have their own schedule.
And I'll tell you, Tim, as somebody who's visited the park numerous times, I have fallen into at least 3 of those issues that you've spoken about, where I go, oh, it's Pennsylvania. We're a developed state. I'm sure there's going to be cell phone signal wherever I go because I would consider myself a city kid. That is not the case. You get to a certain point in this state, it's usually up north once you start crossing a certain threshold, and there's mountains and there's trees, and you're not able to get the signal you may want. But then again, I think that's one of the best things about it is when you're at Leonard Harrison and you're taking your photos, you don't have to post them directly to Instagram. You can kind of sit with it and enjoy it and really look around for different angles and a beautiful place you wouldn't have seen if you were actually on your phone. And about what you were speaking about, if you're going to go on a trail or if you're going to go hiking and to kind of know how to use a compass, how to read a map. Luckily, DCNR has a number of compass reading courses you can take. I took one at Kings Gap State Park that was phenomenal, and now I keep a compass with me wherever I hike because I have the confidence of knowing how to use it. So I think that's one of those things that gets overlooked. I think sometimes people just want to throw on a backpack and go, but it's much better. You're going to be a lot more confident on the trail if you know how to understand the markings, understand how to use a map and compass.
Absolutely. And there's a number of ways to, like you mentioned, there's Kings Gap or any other nearby park. Even if people don't live close to our park, we do offer the same types of trainings here and can do that, but they can find that kind of training probably closer to home. And yeah, it's just amazing what you can do. Being prepared to me is the biggest piece of it. You know, we teach a lot of leave no trace concepts, and first and foremost of that is being prepared. First principle, be prepared, and it is so important, and it can help. You know, you put yourself out there and you put yourself in danger and whatnot. It's one thing if you're willing to do that, but you're taking resources away from agency, and maybe somebody else needs more help than you do. So when you just ask people to be prepared and keep themselves safe, and if they have questions, just ask. We'll help you out. Make sure that you're comfortable before you head out into the woods, and if people call our parks, I think that's something that gets overlooked in today's modern age. If you call a park or forest office today, almost all the time you're getting somebody picking up the phone, a real person, and that's something that I don't think we talk up a whole lot, but there's a real person there, and many times they either are the person with the knowledge about the trails, or they talk with the person who has the knowledge of the trails all the time, and they don't know the answer, they can get it for you as far as trail conditions or how to be prepared, times to come, if trails are closed. I mean, nobody wants to go on a trip and show up and, oh, the trail's closed up. So just remind people they can call and ask for advice, and we even offer advice on what else is there to do in the area. We can help answer those questions as well.
And some of the best information, including at Leonard Harrison, I've gotten is from park rangers. Don't feel intimidated about going up to them. They're there to answer your questions, to help you out in any way they can. There was a ranger that had a great demonstration about what sort of animals were in the area, and I was just so excited to actually be able to talk to him and see what's a local insight. I've only been here twice. You've been here 20 years. You have more knowledge than me, and I'd love for you to be able to share a little bit of it. And he was extremely welcoming and kind and informative. And then he was also like, if you're willing to drive, I have a great spot nobody goes to. You know, DCNR employees are more than happy to share their knowledge and expertise with them. You just have to ask.
like I said, sharing our love of the outdoors, passing that on to future generations. I mean, that it aligns with the mission of the agency and our personal missions too. Is why most of us work the jobs that we work. We're very fortunate to have them. We feel fortunate for that, but many times the reason why we went into this career field was that we love the outdoors, and I'm just happy to be able to share my love of the outdoors and to be able to help people connect with it in ways that I've been able to over the years and continue to be able to as my day-to-day role here at the park.
Tim, I want to thank you so much for being able to talk to us today. I think you provide not only so many tips of how we can make a trip to Leonard Harrison enjoyable, but so much information about what we can see there, what we can do there.
I just appreciate the opportunity to promote the park, promote this beautiful landscape that we have to enjoy here that's been set aside for future generations. And I hope folks come out and experience it for themselves, learn a little bit more about the park, the resource, how it came to be, and enjoy it.
I want to thank my guest, Tim Morey, for joining the podcast. Be sure to check out our website and follow us on Instagram and Facebook for more information about upcoming episodes. This has been Hemlocks to Hellbenders. I'll see you out there. Hosting, production, and editing by Christian Alexandersen. Music by John Sauer. Graphics by Uncle Traveling Matt's Random Expedition.